Stroudsburg, PA, high school fest. I was in New York today, left, but I think they caught quite a treat. I wish they'd been able to stay for Emily and Paul, but
we have a curfew.
they have a curfew in Stroudsburg. Emily is the author of the novels Brookland and The Testament of Eve Gundry, and her essays and criticism have appeared in numerous publications, most recently the Three Penny Review. She's received grants from the Guggenheim Foundation and the National Endowment for the Arts. She met Paul as a result of the both of them having won the Bard Fiction Prize. She is a lecturer at Yale and has recently taught in writing programs at Columbia and NYU. Paul's fourth novel, Luminous Airplanes, is one of Entertainment Weekly's best books of 2011 and one of the Huffington Post's 10 most criminally overlooked novels of 2011. It will be published in paperback in October. His short stories have appeared in Harper's and Sweeney, Spence, Conjunctions, and elsewhere. He is a sporadic contributor to The Believer. He lives in the woods. Please welcome Paul and Emily.
Paul is soaking his feet in a basin of cold water with bath salts. We brought with us all the makings of pedicures in the hopes that people could spontaneously give themselves pedicures. However, for good reason, the gallery does not wish pedicure happening to happen on the floors. So you can, however, if you wish afterwards, come admire the makings of a pedicure. There is hand lotion, if you should find yourself in need of hand lotion. So, okay. All righty. For the past year, I've been trying to write a story in which a pedicure begins as an ordinary experience but ends with a protagonist doomed to have her cuticles trimmed for all eternity. Why do I want to write this? Because it happened to me, of course. 3 hours in a chair, while a chatty blonde patiently rubbed away my calluses and barraged me with tales of her gluten allergy and waxing her teenage daughter's unibrow. At the end, I ran out, shaking with panic, calling back, no time for the manicure, thank you. I want to write about this because the problem isn't that a single pedicure went on too long. All of them are supposed to be relaxing, yet produce a kind of anxiety instead. Worry about wasting time on appearances that could more profitably be spent writing. Worry about squandering money. Worry that if I'm going to be a mother who sends her little son to preschool all day, I ought to do something serious and weighty with those hours. The trouble with writing this story, or with writing it in such a way that another person might want to read it, is that a pedicure is not a plot. Its arc mimics that of a traditional plot. You begin ragged and unkempt, pass through the rising action of soaking, trimming, and massage, climax with polish, and in the denouement, admire your lovely little M&M-like toes. But anyone could tell you this isn't actually a story. The other plot problem is that plot generally involves moving bodies in space, ideally with some admixture of violence, sexiness, humor, and surprise. During a pedicure, you're stuck in a chair with your feet in a tub of water. It's as if it's the mortal enemy of plot. So I am thrilled when Paul suggests we get a pedicure together for this project. All our other ideas have been so beautiful. We'll go look at art together and write about the same pieces. We'll ride the Roosevelt Island tramway. A pedicure, the very thing I want to write about yet with a built-in plot. I go do this girly or gay or mafia thing with a straight guy friend. We go to Gin Soon, a cozy shop in the West Village, the place where I washed my feet in milk and rose petals the night before my wedding. I bring over a clutch of polish colors to choose from, and we sit side by side on pedestal chairs, our backs supported by silk pillows. Our pedicurists bring us steaming mugs of tea. Paul and I talk about writing, about jobs, while the two customers across the way read magazines. Mostly, I think they look a little irritated that we're talking, though when we start discussing iPads, one of them chimes in. Paul's foot soap contains peppermint oil, mine lavender. The scents of acetone, nail polish, green tea, and body lotion also hang in the air. One of the mysteries of Jinsoon is that there, the mixture smells bracing and pleasant. As we sit, I want to enjoy the frisson of our story, of knowing that we are not merely getting a pedicure, but working on an art project while subverting gender norms. But in the moment, I just kind of enjoy myself. As the woman massages about a quart of lotion into my legs, I think how nice it is to get a foot rub. I keep wondering if Paul will send out signals of irony, if he will do or say something that points out how edgy or transgressive this experience is. But he too seems plain old happy to be where he is. Paul chooses to have his nails buffed instead of polished, so he's done first. When I hobble wet-nailed and careful toward the front of the shop in paper slippers twice as long as my feet, he's sitting quietly on the window seat, his bare soles planted on the ground, jeans turned up around his ankles, warm spring sunshine streaming around his shoulders. He resembles a cat who's figured out the optimal nap spot for the day. In his book about the Sabbath, Abraham Joshua Heschel says that Shabbat is a kind of palace in time, a chance each week for ordinary people to slip out of the everyday and into the Garden of Eden. I find this idea intoxicating, but only rarely do I feel it. I experienced the opposite last year when I had the eternal pedicure that made me want to write the story in the first place. But somehow, Paul and I stumble into this kind of time. I have no idea how long we sit until my polish dries. I keep pushing the button to set the little blow dryer machine for another cycle. We talk. We're there some amount of time between 20 minutes and an epoch. People come and go, including a colleague from Bard. When we stroll toward 7th Avenue in search of an ATM, but instead find ourselves drinking vegetable juice on a sunny bench, it's like the moment in the book of Joshua when God makes the sun stand still so the good army can win. It never once crosses my mind how much this costs in minutes of childcare, in hours of writing lost. So as a result of this peculiar dare, I get to write this less ironic, easygoing, and anti-story to the one I originally planned. For a writer, this is quite a good outcome.
Thanks, Emily. Thank you, Albert and Julia and James and everyone at APEC. And thank you all for coming. Let's see, is this gonna work? Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I was looking this over just before we sat in our pedicure reading position, and I realized that it's organized a little bit around certain facts which pertain to Bard College, the place where I teach and where Emily is taught. And I think almost everything you need to know, you can imagine just by substituting for Bard College any small private liberal arts college with a large number of very architecturally diverse buildings. The only other fact that turns out to be relevant, and it won't be relevant until the end of what I'm going to read, is that the president of the college is entirely bald. Sorry about the relevance of that. I should just say up front that there's nothing novel about a man getting a pedicure in the West Village. Surely it happens all the time. Why shouldn't it happen? Men have toenails. Their feet hurt, maybe even as much as the feet of women. It is possible that men don't get pedicures as often as women do, And in fact, when Emily and I went, I was the only man there. And when I used to live in Borough Hill, the place my wife went for her pedicures also never had any men in it. But in the 21st century, these seem like contingent facts. If I had waited around long enough in the West Village salon, how I would have arranged to wait is another question. Possibly I could have changed my mind several times about the color of my toenails. Or I could have undertaken a program of long-distance walking in the weeks leading up to our pedicure, so that my feet would have been covered in time-consuming calluses. Anyway, if I had waited, I'm sure I would have seen other men come in. The person who recommended this West Village place to Emily was a man, an art history professor at Bard College, where Emily once taught, and where I now teach, a school with a higher than average number of pedicured men on its faculty. In fact, just the other night I was at a kind of circus there. Actually, it wasn't a circus so much as a large group of naked undergraduates hitting each other with foam bats, which concluded, and I'm not joking about this, I'm really not joking, with a reenactment of the final scene of Die Hard 2. The one in which Bruce Willis, who is on the ground, blows an airplane up in midair by igniting a trickle of fuel leaking from its fuel tank. The Dean of Student Life played Bruce Willis. The airplane was played by a mylar balloon on the end of a long stick. Apparently, this happens every year. If you're in the Mid-Hudson Valley next May, I sort of mildly encourage you to attend. Anyway, in the middle of the circus, between the foam bats and the mylar balloon, an assistant dean came out and did a musical number in drag, and I'm fairly sure his toenails had been professionally done. Meanwhile, and I probably shouldn't tell you this, there are rumors that Leon Botstein, who is the president of Bard, flies to Jerusalem twice a month to have his toenails painted Titian blue by a Russian ex-Mossad agent. And in fact, the story continues. You know him. And in fact, the story continues. This is the source of his uncanny power to keep constructing buildings without spending any money. If Titian blue nail polish ever becomes unavailable, 3/4 of Bard's campus will turn out to be made of moss and sticks. Personally, I don't believe it. No one has ever seen Leon Botstein's feet. It's not even clear that he has feet. Seminars have been conducted on this question in the philosophy department, and so far as I know, they have not reached a definitive answer. As for the place in Brooklyn, the one where my wife used to go, is called Dashing Diva, which may explain why men hesitate to go in. This makes me think actually that it would be possible to open up the male pedicure market just by giving nail salons names which men don't find embarrassing. If I go into this business, and I may, now that I've told you the rumor about Leon Botstein's toenails, I doubt my contract at Bard will be renewed. And also, I've heard the startup costs for a nail parlor are very modest. Anyway, if and when I get into the male nail business, I'm thinking I'll call my shop the Horny Callus. It'll be an 18 and older kind of pedicure joint. All the toenail colors will fluoresce under black light. I could hire the students from the circus to work there. The licensing exam is apparently pretty easy, and the Bard kids test well. But I don't think any of them are looking for work, and also, we've been asked to keep them away from sharp objects. But I do think a place like that would have no problem attracting male visitors. Or, and this would be a little more complicated, but probably worth doing, I could open a two-sided nail parlor, Dashing Diva on one side, Horny Callus on the other, and let people just go in whichever entrance they felt like. And then what I do is have a kind of fern bar in the middle where people from the two sides could talk while their toenails dried. Either that or I put in a paintball arena where, possibly, if I could get an insurance company to write a policy for it, people would shoot tiny balls of nail polish at one another's naked toes. I think this would be a great way for people in New York City to get to know each other much better than going to readings. Even without getting a paintball gun at Emily's feet, I feel like I know her better now that we've had a pedicure together. I know, for example, that she has a ring on her left middle toe, which, according to Wikipedia, means she is secretly married to someone in India. I was going to ask her about this, but then the pedicurist started rubbing my feet, and I fell asleep. But what I actually wanted to tell you, you men in particular, is that getting a pedicure is fairly pleasant. It costs about $40, and in terms of how pleasant it is, it's somewhere between an hour-long massage at the sadistic Qigong place on Hester Street and a bottle of Knob Creek bourbon. And unlike either of those things, it leaves you with shiny toenails. I highly recommend it, especially if you can go with someone like Emily, who is, as many of you already know, a woman. I can't go back to the place in the West Village, not after I accidentally knocked over a bottle of acetone onto a nail dryer and started a fire which completely destroyed 3 pairs of expensive mules before someone thought to douse it with peppermint oil, an ugly incident that Emily and I agreed not to talk about. Sorry. But I may go to a salon up near Bard. I'm thinking of getting a wax, which is something that men also do these days, or at least that's what I hear from my friends who watch the kind of porn where they show the whole person, not just the feet. Anyway, the place near me has a wax called the Botstein, which I'm thinking of trying. It's supposed to be very serious,